Paul?
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mrs. Boland?
Here.
Dr. Flowers?
Present.
Mrs. Gaines?
Here.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Mr. Phelan?
Here.
Dr. Shoemaker?
Here. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I do have a memorial to read for one of our wonderful teachers who passed away recently. Lori Ellen Swistak, who passed away Tuesday, September 18th, 2012, at home in Newport. Born in Holyoke, Massachusetts on March 27, 1947, she was the daughter of the late Everett A. and Kathleen O'Neill Thibodeau. A 1964 graduate of Cathedral High School in Springfield, Massachusetts, Mrs. Swistak was also a 1990 graduate of Salve Regina University, majoring in religious studies and elementary education. She taught at various area elementary schools and most recently at Cranston Calvert School for 18 years before retiring in 2008. A parishioner at St. Joseph Parish, Ms. Swistak was noted especially for her singing talent in children's choir at Christmas Eve Mass. And if you missed that, you really missed a treat. She is survived by her husband of 42 years, Christopher R. Swistak, who retired on June 30th, 2000 at Rogers High School teacher of mathematics, and their 4 children, Laura C. Swistak of Portsmouth, Christopher R. Swistak Jr. of Ballston Spa, New York, Brian Swistak of Arlington, Virginia, and Patrick Swistak of Newport. Her 6 grandchildren, Emma, Christopher III, Avery, and Olivia Swistak, Cody Field, and Tyler Boyani are also survive her. She was a sister of Roger G. Thibodeau of Cumming, Georgia, and David C. Thibodeau of Belchertown, Massachusetts. She was the daughter-in-law of Walter and late Helen Swistak of Newport, and the sister-in-law of Mark Swistak and Michael Swistak of Jamestown, Susan McQueenie of Middletown, and Sally Swistak of Newport. Many nieces and nephews also survive her. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Read too many of those. Public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment? Anybody would like to make public comment that hasn't signed up yet? Yes, sir. You'll have to take the microphone and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's John Brennan. I wanted to come here tonight to kind of represent my daughter. This is my wife, Michelle Brennan. Our daughter, Bailey, is a student here at Underwood School, and I'm sure you've all heard the story of her getting lost on the bus system, one of the several nightmares that happened in the opening weeks of the school year here. We wanted to try and bring it to the attention of the school committee that the first student is having so much trouble. In last year, the school department had, I know that it was just a nightmare for the teachers, for the principals, for students and parents throughout Newport. In fact, last year, the bus driver literally dropped Bailey, who had just started at 4 years old. She was a pre-K student. The bus driver didn't know her bus stop and dropped her off with a stranger. He found somebody mowing their lawn out front and said, "Do you know this little girl?" He had seen her, was our neighbor. She did not know him, but as a 4-year-old, she went with the stranger, and it was hours before we were able to find her. Again, this year, as the school year started, that first day when I went to get her at the bus stop, thinking everything would be fine, the bus had misplaced her. They put her on the wrong bus. That was a mistake. The problem that I had was that when the bus came by, and they let me basically on the bus to pick my kid, they would have let me pick any kid off of that bus. I know they would have. There was a communication breakdown with first student. They were refusing to answer phone calls from the school. They were refusing to answer phone calls from parents, and even refusing to answer phone calls from their own bus drivers. When bus drivers were running into, and they did several, as you know, several times, when they were running into problems with kids that they didn't know where they belonged and kids that didn't, that were going to the wrong stop and were on the wrong bus, the school bus system failed. It was not helping the bus drivers out. And then again, on the second day, the bus company lost her. It turned out she had fallen asleep on the bus, but now because there had been so many problems the first day, the bus driver wouldn't even look for her. The bus driver and monitor were unaware that there was a 5-year-old on their bus who had fallen asleep. And so they, when her grandfather went to pick her up, they said, you know, she's just not here. Now, when I recently went to Ruby Tuesdays, we noticed that they have a computer system out front. They can not only get your order to your table, they can tell you how many steps each waiter took for each order. They can tell you who walked the most miles in a given night. That's for hamburgers and French fries. I honestly think that if we're dealing with a commodity as valuable as our children, we really shouldn't be leaving it to the trust of some people that are as incompetent as First Student. We've had bus companies in the past that did not have the problems, and my biggest concern is that next year there's the intention of opening up a brand new school that nobody has ever been to. The teachers will not be familiar with it, the bus drivers will be unfamiliar, and if we have a bus company as incompetent as First Student, we are going to have some real problems. It will not end with just losing kids. When they talk about the level of training that it takes to have somebody say, it's all right to drop a 5-year-old off with a stranger or at an empty house. It's a simple matter of communication and training, and any bus company that doesn't want to put that into their efforts really has no business transporting the children of Newport. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brandon. And first, my sincere apologies to you and your wife and your child, because you're absolutely right, it never should have happened. We've talked about this particular issue at our last school committee meeting because of the rough opening process, and a number of us said, can't we just fire them now and just bring in a new school bus company? As you can imagine, logistically, it's a little difficult to do middle of the year, but their contract runs out this year. So the next school committee has an opportunity to go out and hire a more professional bus company that actually cares as much about the children as the parents do. And I have to tell you, I would not be as calm as you have been. I imagine you're not as calm about this all the time, but very well spoken. I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yeah, we just really hope that we've considered the idea that maybe First Student is open to change, but I really, after having tried to speak with and communicate with them, after getting no response from them whatsoever on the issue, even though this issue is an issue that's been picked up in newspapers all around the state and in news organizations, they really just, they feel like they've just made a simple mistake and they've delivered your French fries to the wrong table.
Yeah. And they are a precious commodity. I really do apologize for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly,
Thank you. Mr. Leary.
if I may ask, can we get the company to come in front of us? I know I asked that before, but I want to be clear. It's very important when you vote. I did not vote to support this contract 2 years ago. You know, I would like to have them come in front of us right now, and let's see what's going on.
I think we can put that on our next agenda.
We pay them $1 million a year. Let's get them in front of us.
could. You know my frustration.
Let's get them in front of us, $1 million.
Call up and
Tell me why I'm in
express
front of us.
concerns. But they're up for a contract renewal.
Well, I still like to have them in front of us. I don't see why
I hope they
not.
don't even bother.
Apply?
Right.
Right.
Well,
I don't know that they'll get any support from the people sitting here.
well, that's true, and we're all very concerned with it. And had we been able to do something earlier, I'm sure that we would have. But as Mr. Kelly said, eliminating a firm in the middle of the year is a nightmare, and then you're involved in a whole lot of things. But we have the opportunity to change it next year.
I hope we do.
Yes.
I hope by now they answer the telephones. Dr. Shoemaker, sorry.
The other person on that bus I'd like to, is the monitor. And I know that you see them get out of the bus and you see them check underneath the wheels, but what is the responsibility of that monitor? We've heard of kids falling asleep.
I mean, it's standard operating procedure,
Yeah.
Charlie. It's not
No,
rocket
I know
science.
it's standard, but I'm just saying, what the state put into effect as a result of the accident on
Right,
Atlantic
yeah.
Island, there must be some regulations in which govern those people, and I would just like to, if anybody knows any of the details. I
Well,
mean,
they're-
common
they're-
sense doesn't make any, I agree with you, but I don't know.
You know, they're supposed to go around the bus to make sure that no kid is under the bus, and then they get
check
back
the
in the bus to
seats.
make sure it's okay. But truth to tell, they should make sure that all the kids are off the bus before the bus goes back into the
Right,
yard.
right.
And,
I'm pretty sure that's a requirement, too.
you
Yeah.
know, I mean, that,
Yeah.
one would think that would be happening, so, again, I
Well,
apologize.
do we get the same monitors if we switch bus
Well,
companies?
we don't know what would, we really don't know what would happen. You may even get some of the same bus drivers, but there might be a better management structure.
Right.
I don't
The
know.
other ones are-
But truth to tell, obviously, between last year, remember
Right.
last year?
Right, this is the second
With other
year.
types of problems which didn't get corrected, and this year, you know, obviously, there's a substantial concern.
I just wanted to address that question is, just by experience, I work at CVS, and mistakes will happen. People are people, humans make mistakes. We have processes in place so that if I count the wrong number of pills, or the wrong type of pill, put them in the bottle to deliver to a patient, somebody else double checks me. There's a process to make sure that my mistake doesn't turn into a life-threatening or a dangerous situation for somebody. And even if we see that we get the same bus drivers and same bus monitors, what I'd like to see is, in the past, we've had companies that obviously have a plan in place whereby if something goes wrong, there's a safety net. There's somebody else there. If the bus driver makes an error, there's a bus monitor to say there's a sleeping child. If the two of them can't figure out what's going on with the child, there's a communication system to contact the main bus company or the school. And that's where the breakdown, I think, has really been vital in this case.
Communication system.
Mm.
I'd also like to say that it's not with all of the bus drivers and all of the monitors.
Oh, yes, some of the bus drivers we've dealt with.
The team that
Fantastic.
picked her up in the afternoons last year was wonderful. The monitor was careful about not just looking around the bus, but making sure she was on the bus, that she was buckled into the bus properly. The bus driver would not move until he was sure that she was on the bus and settled in. It's not all of them, but this particular team, my father asked if she was on the bus. They said, she's not on the list, she's not on the bus. They wouldn't even get up and look. They just said, she's not on the list, she's not on the bus. Now that was actually untrue because the principal of the school herself had given the bus monitor a pen to write her name onto that list. So she was not only on the list, on the bus, but she was also on the list. They just would not check. So it's not every team. But
Having the right protocols in place is
Absolutely.
extremely important. Mrs. Bowler?
Well, you know, I wonder, you know, a lot of it has to do with the leadership, I think, you know, at the top here over at, you know, First Student. And I wonder if we put this on the radar of First Student in Connecticut in making sure that they understand. And I would hope that the number one thing is there has to be someone there all the time to answer that phone. Have we made that clear with them, that there will be somebody at First
in
Student?
front of us.
We have, we also are aware that sometimes the person in charge is out driving buses because they don't have enough bus folks, but I do have the cell phone, and someone should answer the cell phone when I call. So,
Thank you very much, and again, our apologies. We have no resolutions or certificates. Student activity update from Gabrielle Hermes.
Hello. So for the Viking report of this last month in school, Spirit Week continues tomorrow with Costume Day. And then on Thursday we have Class Color Day, and of course Red and Black Day on Friday for our annual pep rally, where Vikings will be rooting for the football players to head to victory as they face New Bedford for their homecoming game. Also, the annual homecoming dance will be held this weekend at Rogers High School. And this Sunday, Rhode Island College will sponsor a college fair for local high school students from 1 to 3 at Rhode Island College. As for extracurriculars, the Rogers Theater Company is in full swing, preparing for their winter production of a selection of Christmas plays. Tonight, girls volleyball is home against Johnston, And girls soccer remains undefeated, so come to our game tomorrow and cheer us on.
Are you playing at home?
Yep,
Yep.
it's home.
Excellent.
And furthermore, state testing begins tomorrow for juniors, and sophomores are preparing for their PSATs next week, and the October SATs have already been completed this past Saturday. That's about it for the Viking Report.
Thank you very much. Dr. Flowers?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I've been involved with the Newport Festa Italiana, and as most of the people on the committee are of a certain age, we needed help to set up the tables and the chairs and all that sort of thing for the festival in the park. And we really publicly like to thank Linda Matosa from the Guidance Office for securing a number of young people to help with that particular project. They did it for their, their service credits.
A couple
Yeah.
of service.
Yeah, but they went above and beyond, and we had 3 of our football giants. They didn't need ladders. It was Jordan Holder, Jason Cole, and Quentin Jones. And in the afternoon, they came back when it was time to break down. Claire Brown came by also and helped. Chase Segley was present at a number of the events. Chase was one of the 2 with Renee Mason who went to Imperia last month. They were excellent ambassadors for the city of Newport, because Imperia is our sister city. And so Chase was at the concert also Sunday night, and if you were at the parade, or if you see the video of it, he was carrying the Newport Festa Italiana banner. I was on the other end, so that was interesting, I mean, there's a few inches difference in our height, but it worked out well, and he went right straight through. He stayed at the monument program. So and everyone who worked with these young people said they are indeed good representatives of Rogers High School and the young people in our city. So I publicly want to thank them all for doing that.
Thank you, Dr. Flowers. And everybody's probably talking about college applications this time of year,
Yes.
getting ready for that.
Yep.
Good.
It's exciting and yet a little bit stressful.
It is. Waiting for those responses can be stressful.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that update.
You're
Any other
welcome.
questions?
I had one.
Oh, Mrs.
Yeah.
Boland.
How are ticket sales going for the homecoming dance in light of new rules?
It's been a little up and down. We've been a little unsure of what to do, but starting today, well, not today because obviously it's not school time, but starting tomorrow at lunch, we are going to start selling them, and I think we're going to be very convincing, and we are going to have the dance. So.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, approval of minutes, personnel actions, request for home instruction.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. I'd like to, I have a question about the personnel actions.
We should pull anyway, so separate vote, I always
Yeah, so
want
pull
that.
the personnel actions. All right. So can we amend the motion to approve the minutes and the request for home instruction?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Moved and-
amended.
Moved and seconded?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving minutes and request for home instructions?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Personnel actions. Actually, I'm very glad to see we have a very highly qualified Director of Technology applicant available to the school department to fill in the gap that's been created the last few months. I guess I just had a question, Dr. Ambrosi. The contract's written to model last year's,
Just Joan Tracy's contract, who was the only one who had one for this year.
okay.
Okay?
Okay,
It-
yep,
it's-
all right, I
It's
understand.
just modeling Joan Tracy's contract.
Right.
Because she has one for this year.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay?
Yep, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr.
Ms.
Chairman,
Leary?
there was 44 applicants and only 2 were interviewed. Was there a reason for that?
This was the second time around. We compacted everything. In other words, we went around the first time, couldn't find anybody. And then this was the second time around, and we only had 3 additional applicants, so.
Oh, the form says number of applicants 44.
Yeah, right. Total applicants. Don't forget, we interviewed before. I had 3 finalists before, and none of the 3 were good enough.
Yep, oh, okay, yes, that
Okay?
was that first pass.
So
yeah.
that was the first time around. We reopened it, re-advertised.
So
And
that's
this
the
time-
total.
This time, we
Okay.
had I guess 6 more. So the 44 were from before and from the second posting.
I'll tell you that Brown University has a very good IT team up there. My son has no problems, gets all the help he needs, so.
A nice young
It'll work
man,
out
I
well.
think he'll have a long career here in Newport.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the personnel actions?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
When does he begin work?
29th of October. He's a good, loyal guy. He said he wanted to be there and give them some time. He's been there for a number of years, so I guess he wanted to leave on a good note, so.
Okay, we're into action items. 6.1, it's a motion to approve attendance at school committee National School Board Association Conference for 2013.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So, I guess you let Dr.
Yeah.
Ambrosi know, and then
If you wanna
start
go.
the registration process for that.
And it's important to have an early registration so you can get your hotel of choice.
The hotel is the issue, because
Near the
the
conference
other thing
convention
isn't, you've got till January 15th or something for the early bird special.
Where's the conference?
But the hotel is,
Yeah.
the hotel's the
It's
issue.
in San Diego, so it'd be very important to get
Yeah,
early
the hotel,
registration.
right.
Well, yeah, in the windows.
Okay. Item 6.2, have had a very busy policy subcommittee, and so we have a number of actions related to updating policy manual items. Dr. Flowers, do you want to take these?
Yeah, the first, I just want to make sure I have everything in front of me that's correct here. The first one on the list is number 3110, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. This is the Newport Public Schools Business Fiscal Management Budget. And the inserted paragraph, you'll see it's in red.
Yes.
Does that have to be read aloud, or?
No, this is the second reading for that.
Yeah, this is the second reading. There was no changes to this, I believe.
Neil reviewed it, no changes.
Yeah, there were nothing was amended, so.
Could you explain to the public basically what it is, like in a sentence?
Okay, well, it says, it starts off that the superintendent shall prepare the proposed annual budget, and the legislatively required three-year budget forecast. And this is all in accordance with Rhode Island general laws. We put in the paragraph that says the Newport School Committee recognizes that it has the responsibility of properly maintaining properties that are under their control. In recognition of this, an amount of not less than 1% of the annual operating budget shall be allocated to the Capital Projects Fund budget line item each year. In the event that said allocation is not expended in the budget year, the balance shall be contributed to the School Department Facility Fund and used to pay for future school facility capital improvements. So it assures that a definite percentage goes in each year. And this is the second reading.
My comment was that she was going to skip reading it.
We should read it the second time.
But no, I think for the people who are listening, it's important that.
No,
that they-
and Mr. Chairman, that's why I asked,
Larry.
and this is very important, because, since I've been on this committee, that 1% has been adhered to until this year, and then we had to re-vote it back up. So now, if the committee chooses in the future to go forward with that, they have to suspend the rules or do two readings. So going forward, put 1% of our budget into keeping up our properties, and I've been a fan of that since day one I've been on this committee. It will never hit a net for me, and I propose to get this on here, and thank you all for getting it done.
You're welcome. Okay, so that's the second reading, so that's passed and will become part of our permanent
We have voted.
policy manual.
Right.
We have to vote on it?
Yeah,
Oh.
they have to.
Do you have a motion to approve on the second reading?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. The next policy, 4610, is a first reading.
First reading, okay, I'm going to call it up here so I can, don't want to do this from memory at all here. This is, 4610, and it is Human Resources Recruitment and Appointment of the Superintendent. And some of the initial part of that particular policy remains where there are regulations governing this recruitment and selection issued by the Board of Regents for Education. And then we have a whole list of mandated regulations. One line was deleted, which was wide announcement of the vacancy, but the first step that the subcommittee put in was a selection of a firm recognized in the profession for competency to conduct a superintendent search. We continue with the next point, which is forwarding to interested persons pertinent information regarding the position, etc., which those firms, as I understand, they're generally the ones that do all of that. And then the appointment of a screening committee to assist the school committee in the process of selection, unless it's waived by the commissioner in exceptional cases. Into that particular point, we've inserted the composition of the committee shall follow the guidelines cited in policy number 4612, which refers to the diversity, and that will be mentioned in a while. This is so that each of our, no two of our policies will contradict one another, that it includes that. And then, of course, the rest of the mandates are as they have been written. We go down toward the end, that appointment of the new superintendent shall be official when the school committee votes to offer a contract to the chosen candidate and the appointment is accepted. So the school committee's vote is what makes it all official. So just pretty much summarizing it, it was taking out one line that really was redundant, selecting the firm to go on the search, and then assuring that the composition of the screening committee follows the guidelines that are cited in another policy for hiring that mandates that there be a diverse population in the screening committee. I hope that's clear.
Okay, page 2.
We do have,
Then we go further down. This is about the initial
Page 2.
contract.
Yeah.
With the contract, an initial contract of no more than 3 years may be offered. I believe, is that in line with the state requirements
That's
also?
state law.
And after a successful annual evaluation and review, the superintendent may be offered a one-year extension of the existing contract with review and adjustments of the compensation package as necessary. So there's, it gives enough, leeway is not the word, but what the state mandates, that no more than 3 years, and then, of course, you have the annual evaluations and review.
I have a couple of requests perhaps for slight modifications. And number one, the selection of a firm recognized in the profession for competency to conduct the superintendent search. I would suggest adding one more sentence, unless the school committee deems otherwise.
right.
Yeah.
Can I weigh in on this
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
quickly? We did some research on Friday and today, and it appears as though whatever regulations the Board of Regents used to have, they no longer have, or
We
we
don't
can't
know that.
find. So we need to have some time to determine whether or not these regulations even exist anymore, because we're not sure. Neil did research today. I called people up. We're not sure that they even exist anymore. This could have been a throwback to the 90s, when the State Department of Education had these rules and regulations. That being said, you can develop the body of this, but I would take, if there is no state requirement, this should be taken out before the second reading. I just wanted to make that clear.
Because this tonight is just the first reading.
Yeah, what I realized when I got my board docs, that there are quotation marks here, starting at every school committee and ending at the end of number 6. And we can't adjust anything
state
that's
has
in
done.
quotation marks. So my suggestion was to leave this intact leave it alone until we find out from the state whether or not these things still exist, and adopt the context of the changes, but leaving the format to be determined. Not changing the concepts, but the way that it's presented might be different on the second reading.
In other words, you'd take out any reference to the commissioner or the Board of Regents if there is
If there is no further, if there are no regulations, then we don't need to quote them.
Right.
But I think there are, though. We just haven't hit the right person to find
Okay,
them.
so we're going to go back and kind of
Yeah.
keep the quotations or modify that.
Yeah,
for the
what
second
we
reading.
would, for the second reading, we would leave this as is. After number 6, the language on the selection of the competent firm, et cetera, would be added there.
Yeah, instead of
Rather than
in
wider.
within those quotes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
so bring that back.
We'll
to the
bring
next
that
Yeah,
back next
yeah.
time.
The other comment, the very last sentence that we've changed, after successful annual evaluation review, the superintendent may be offered a one-year extension of the existing contract. I would like it to say, I would recommend it say, may be offered a one-year extension during the final year of the existing contract, so we get away from rolling contracts being committed to by the school committee.
We did discuss that,
Mhm.
remember,
I wasn't there.
when we were talking.
Right.
And
It was
there
a time
was-
question.
Hmm?
It was a time issue.
I will
yeah,
only,
it's a time issue.
I will only give you my thoughts on that. If you have that in there, you could have a superintendent who a school committee thought did a really great job for 2 years and 4 months, and the school committee, especially in Newport, could change entirely on one issue. And that superintendent would basically have no notification at all before they hit the streets. So I felt that perhaps there could be some way of not turning people off to apply to Newport by making it that strict. Maybe it's a 1 year after the first 2 years or something. But the likelihood that there could be one issue where a superintendent by one school committee is told that they have to close a school, a new school committee comes in November, and the person's in their 3rd year of a contract, and then they don't get renewed. I would think that might be an issue
I
that
just remembered.
you could consider.
I just remembered something.
Mrs. Gaines.
We use the word may
May.
and not shall.
Yeah, that's way to
And
be very
that
careful.
gives the school committee
don't have to.
flexibility.
Nice leeway, nice flexibility, exactly. We're
That
very
give-
careful with that.
That gives the school committee the flexibility of offering a one-year extension or not.
We have to go back and look at this language in this committee also. The intent was to not have the contract of the superintendent out of reach of the sitting school committee, which is what happens if you have a 3-year contract with a rolling end
won't.
date to it.
So you want to add that sentence, Mr. Kelly?
I think we want to go back and bring back new language for the next school committee meeting.
Take a look at maybe something
Yeah.
in between
has to
the
be
two.
something.
I thought the may allowed that flexibility. Because you might have the
you might
evaluation
want to.
and do nothing as far as extending the contract.
If you say shall, you'll lock
If you
that
say
down.
shall, you'd have to do something. You say may, you may or may not.
And we'll go back and take a look at the language for that.
So-
So
so
that
this
one
is-
will have a significant revision for the next 3
Right.
Yeah, so this is
Like the
just
first
a
reading.
first reading anyway.
Number 4612.
The next one is,
So we're not going to vote on it, I guess we're going to table it?
oh, no,
I think it's, the changes are so substantial that we should table it till the next meeting.
Agreed,
Okay.
yeah.
For
so
another-
with the next meeting, would that be first
So we'll
reading
post-
again?
I think so.
postpone
Yeah,
the first
and
reading.
by that point in time, Neil should find
we'll
out
have
Yeah.
what's real and what's
Can I have a motion to
fiction.
postpone the first
So
reading?
moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes, we'll postpone that first reading.
The other should be.
So then we look at 4612, the interview process and procedures for selection of principals and above. And this is the part, this is with the interview committee, this is the issue that was referenced just previously. And it starts off, for the public's information, that an interview committee, which says right now, composed of a teacher, a principal, a community representative, a parent or guardian, a central office administrator, and there was a phrase that said equity and education representative and others. That entity is no longer. But we've inserted one or more community members reflecting the ethnic diversity of the district and others, because there could be any others depending on the position. And then it continues, as appropriate to the position being considered, shall be established by the superintendent. So the superintendent sets up the interview committee of all of these individuals, but we want to assure here that the community members reflect the ethnic diversity of the district. And I believe
That's all.
that is the only change on that particular, that's the only one change on that policy.
We have a motion to pass on the first reading.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that item?
Mrs.
Mr.
Kelly,
Leary?
2 questions. What is this equity and education representative, first of all?
not
It no
there
longer
anymore.
exists.
Well, was it?
No longer.
It was a community-wide committee that assisted the superintendent and the school committee in interviews.
Okay. That's very interesting,
But
putting
it's
out policy.
capitalized, so that
That's
means
interesting,
it's-
putting out policy.
And which meant that, yeah,
It
which
doesn't
meant that it
exist.
was a specific
It
group,
it existed when the policy was written.
which was back in,
So now is a cleanup to take that
Yeah.
Yep.
non-existent entity out. Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes on the first reading. I think
and
this
then
is
if
the last-
anyone has,
Right.
okay, now, let me just pull this one here.
4650 is the last
46.
policy subcommittee.
4630.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm one ahead.
It's
Okay,
okay.
4630.
Let me just get mine open here, I want to. Okay. No, I don't want paper. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is dealing with staff vacancies. Again, in accordance with the Newport School Department's policy of non-discrimination and affirmative action, and policy number 4500, that's been inserted, the and policy number 4500. So again, we're trying to be very careful with our cross-references. There's a whole section that referred to affirmative action, qualified women and minorities, special disabled veterans, all these particular phrases that, even mentioning of the Vietnam era, so it tells you how old this policy is. We've had too many, unfortunately, too many actions. Okay. So the superintendent shall recruit qualified individuals reflecting the diversity of the district and disabled persons, including qualified veterans. So that makes it very inclusive, because the word minorities just doesn't work right now. And I think maybe Mrs. Gaines might, can you shed a little more, I think we talked about this.
When this policy was written, I hate doing this because it makes me sound like I've been here forever, but I guess I have. When this policy was written, when you thought of minority, you thought of one ethnic group. Now, when you say a minority, you might be talking about 6 or 7 different ethnicities. So the term diversity has gained more favor in these kinds of policies. The language is more reflective and more inclusive.
And always, the word qualified is always there. I mean,
Well, that goes
it's a
without
given.
saying.
It's a given, but again.
You got to
it's-
use it.
Yeah. But
Okay.
there was a whole long paragraph that really would not be. Pardon me? Sure. This particular paragraph, it says, in accordance with the Newport School Department's policy of non-discrimination and affirmative action, and policy number 4500, which we can cite, the superintendent shall recruit qualified individuals reflecting the diversity of the district and disabled persons, including qualified veterans.
Okay. Do you have a motion to approve on the first reading?
So moved.
Moved and seconded? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And
We had some changes as a result of Mr. Galvin's comments.
To
Dr. Flowers on the next one.
Okay,
Yeah,
now it's
yeah, we'll do some
4650.
checking on this too.
4650. Let me just get it up again.
are changes reflected in what's in board docs, or?
No, they're not, but they're fairly easily determined. So,
I don't have that language, do you?
I do.
Okay.
But
Do you
this-
have,
this
you
is
have,
the one that we,
right, do you have that?
okay, so we're looking at 4650 now?
That's correct.
Okay, hold on a
This
second,
should say that.
because I saved it on my hard drive. Hold on a second.
Correct it next to.
Okay. Too
Yeah,
much stuff on the screen.
It's
Just bear with
referred
me.
to.
It's really easy. Joe,
Okay.
the only difference is the third paragraph. It has to stay the way it was before, because that's state law.
Yeah. The superintendent of schools shall fulfill that one?
Where
This-
are you?
The third paragraph, it's got to say the superintendent shall fulfill his role as defined by state law by appointing the candidate, yada, 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 subject to the consent of the school committee. That's what the state law
That's
is.
the way the
So
law-
we, you know, I
That's
must
what
have,
I
I must
know.
have, I must have had a flashback to New Jersey when I was going through this, because in New Jersey, school committee appoints, the superintendent recommends, and the school committee can't appoint without the superintendent's recommendation. This has the same impact,
Right.
but we have to have it consistent with state law.
And
And-
for, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have the other
No,
change?
I have it here, yeah. Well, appointments and promotions, okay. The second paragraph. Apparently, they always started things with normally, well, that's deleted, okay. An ad hoc initial is put in, interview committee appointed by the Director of Human Resources according to the terms of composition described in policy 4212. So here we are reflecting the diversity again. Shall review all applications and make recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. Then we go down to the paragraph that says, all successful
Yeah.
applicants, you got that one?
Yes.
Must possess at least the minimum legal qualifications. Okay. If an opening occurs during the summer recess, all teachers shall be notified via email. Before it was first-class mail and all of that.
That's the change.
But then, yeah, so we had just said notified, but Neil said the email is the way to go on that.
You need the specificity of the notification.
And then inserted a paragraph, all Newport residents and identified minorities. Now, in this case,
It's
minorities
plural,
works, yeah. Who meet minimum qualifications shall be granted an initial interview. So that's what the courtesy interviews then. And some of them are
Mr.
Mrs.
Chairman,
Gaines.
part of it, and I think
that's a
that's,
typo. It should be 4612 in the first
oh,
red line.
4212, okay, it should be 46.
According to the terms of composition described in policy number 4612.
4612, okay. Hit the wrong key. There we go.
Pat?
Dr. Shoemaker?
Dr.
Okay.
Flowers, could you just, it's paragraph 1, 2, 3, the new one that says all Newport residents. Can you explain that?
Okay, hold on, which paragraph are you
The one in
looking at?
red,
All
new-
the residents.
the new red.
Okay, in red where it says all Newport residents?
You want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a policy that is in practice, but it's not in policy. And what we're hoping to, that the next superintendent, to ensure that the next superintendent keeps this in place, we're putting it in policy.
Does this exclude somebody from out of town?
No.
No.
This is
It
the
doesn't exclude
practice that I've had since I've come here, and it doesn't exclude anybody from out of town.
They'll be granted an initial interview. They may.
In the past, we've had complaints that Newport residents have applied for jobs and never get any response.
So at least they will
And
get, yeah.
this is more than a response.
All
You
right.
apply if
And you
your
get them, excuse me,
application is deemed
Qualified.
qualified, you get an interview.
Yeah, you have to be qualified.
It
But
doesn't mean they get the job.
No.
Just means they get the interview.
But explain that again. If somebody from Newport has applied for this, they haven't heard back. Well, if it came from Middletown, shouldn't they get a response back? I mean, not necessarily an interview, but shouldn't they get a response?
Well, they're all getting a
They
response.
should get a response.
Well,
Well, that's it,
what was the
yeah.
reason you,
You get an interview. They're guaranteed.
they didn't get
There
an
should be a
interview?
response.
Okay.
Didn't get an interview. Everybody should get a response back. Thank you very much for your interest in the job. Nowadays, it's as we talked about before, you have 400 elementary teaching positions
450.
open. So we send it on School Spring, job closed, thanks a lot. So,
Thank you.
But, yeah, it's the courtesy of an initial interview. Yeah.
We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, Mr. Leary?
Just a follow-up on Dr. Brogio's point there. There was 455 for that
sorry, Mr.
job.
Leary. I knew it was over 400.
Yeah, I know you did. So my question to you was that's how many people are looking for jobs nowadays. And last month we appointed a teacher assistant with 49 applicants, and 4 of them out of the 7 who interviewed had master's degrees, and all 7 had BAs. But with that said, is there a way on School Spring to identify minorities?
Yes.
Because I don't think you review all 455
No.
applications.
We have a filter to identify minorities, but the individual candidates have to self-select. If they don't indicate that they're a person of color or a minority, then we can't know that, but we do have the filter there.
Okay. Any other questions on that?
So that's how that works.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item is approval of the Pell Option Subcommittee. So this is the subcommittee that Mrs. Boland and I will be on. Mrs. Boland will chair. I think Dr. Jay Booth and Dr. Townsend will be the administrative representative. But by our policy, the chair of the school committee and chair of the subcommittee review applicants and make a recommendation to the school committee. So we had probably on the order of 18 or so, I didn't count them all, applicants, but we went through the list and tried to pick a set that represented diversity in terms of racial background, walks of life, sections of the city they live in, schools that they represent. So I think we came up with actually a tremendous list. We haven't notified them yet pending approval by the school committee. But we will also invite everybody who asked to be part of this to participate in the meetings.
It's an open,
also.
yeah.
It's an open
It's
public
open
meeting. I think these 7 people will really add a lot of value to the conversation. So Mrs. Cord, Captain Michael Young, Mr. Ned Conley, Mrs. Ada Neary, Mrs. Karen Palmer, Mr. Dominic Knight, and Mr. Robert Seafall. So I think that's really a good cross-section of people in the community.
And I think that, each of these people, are from a different section. We make sure we had every elementary school because they'd be more familiar with the workings of that particular elementary school. And also, I think it was really good that, we had somebody from the military who plans to be here for another 3 years, who has young children who wanted to get involved. So that was a really easy one. And we also have somebody that's from that is on the fire department. So I think that all those, and as I said, we are hoping that, I notice you're going to notice there are no teachers on this committee right now, but we absolutely want teacher input, and they're more than welcome to show up at the meetings and sit at the table with us and discuss the options. So,
Mr. Kelly?
Dr. Flowers.
Yeah.
Flowers.
I'm just looking at the addresses. Did you get any applicants from public housing?
yes.
No. No, we didn't.
It's unfortunate.
We did
yeah.
get people from every walk of life, though.
Oh, no, yeah, but I'm just saying,
We can
if
talk
we could
about
get
that
some
later,
people
but-
from
Right,
public
yes.
housing, it would have
Yep.
been,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe, is it possible to still reach out to,
I think we had a deadline for application.
Yeah.
7 members. We were going to stop at 5 members. We felt, Ms.
Yeah.
Bowl and I felt 7 gave us an even more diverse group to look at this. I wouldn't want more voting members because it becomes unwieldy to have the meetings and have the discussion, but certainly would encourage those people to attend the meetings.
We did send out the email to everyone. We also asked the principals to reach out to folks that they thought might be appropriate members of this committee. So,
David?
Hi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm David Kusajani, Teachers Association of Newport President. I'm not on.
You're not on.
The Teachers Association was just wondering why no teachers were on the committee.
So to be honest, I was trying to keep the committee relatively small. We have two principals from the elementary school. We would like teachers to participate in the meetings and give us their points of view, because what we think, here's what's happened. In 2009, when we started planning this school, we had demographic estimates based on past history that we would go from just under 800 kids when the school opened to under 700 within a 6 or 7 year period. Turns out what's really happened is we've had increasing and steady enrollment up in the 900 area. So we may need 1, 2, 3, 4 more classrooms that are actually in that school. So we're going to need to look at the program of education, the art, the music, the library, the physical education. We have to look at transportation issues. We're going to have to look at cost of different options if you do need 1, 2, 3, 4 extra classrooms. So especially for the program of education, obviously teachers' input is going to be very important, as well as the principal input. So hopefully some will be able to participate in the discussion. But once you make the group too big, we're at 11 already, then it just becomes very unwieldy, right, to have the conversations, make the motions, take the votes.
No, I respect the fact that you're saying some teachers can give input. It's just a bit different from past practice. Generally, with all other committees that were formed, the teachers were invited to be on the committees or to encouraged to apply. And in this particular instance, it didn't occur. So I've received a lot of questions, that's all.
I'm not sure that that's true.
I don't know.
It's certainly not in our policy that happened. So
Okay.
we thought this was an appropriate makeup for this particular question at hand, given that the enrollment's larger than we thought. We might need a few extra rooms. How do the parents feel about different options for addressing that particular challenge?
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Bowen.
I also just wanted to mention that we've come up with the meeting dates as Wednesdays, and I'll just mention them in case anybody, watching, viewing audience. Wednesday, the 24th of October, Wednesday, the 7th of November, the 14th of November, the 28th of November, and the 5th of December, and the 11th of December. And all those meetings are at 4:45, and I assume we're going to meet here. We might move around on some of them.
One has the potential of being a facilities tour. If there are options in consideration, I think people should look at the facilities before they voice an opinion on them. And the one on the 11th is actually our school committee meeting for the recommendation to come forth from that subcommittee.
So, just so you know, 4:45 on Wednesdays.
Okay, we'll send out notification to everybody who applied, including the candidates, assuming we approve them, because we haven't done that yet. Mrs. Gaines.
How are you going to solicit faculty input?
I think we'll send faculty notification of the meetings, elementary school faculty.
Well, it's an open public meeting.
Right.
Yeah, but people need to be invited.
And we can send out things on the listserv to the elementary staff.
Right. Is there a suggestion that we add a teacher representative?
I don't think it would hurt. One or two.
So the goal of our policy manual for this type of group is to have a majority representation of community and members. So our suggestion that we have 7 parent members would mean we'd have no more than 6 on. So right now we have 2 administrators, 2 school committee people. So I guess we'd have room for 2 more at most to keep a majority representation of the community.
Would you ask the president of the union to solicit or to get 2 people to volunteer?
From your membership, could you ask for 2 volunteers that you could recommend to us?
I'd be more than happy to.
Thank you. Yep, that'd be excellent. Okay. Okay, very good. Dr. Flowers.
Yeah, I'm looking at your meeting agendas here,
Yes.
and I'm not on the building committee, as Mrs. Gaines chairs that. And I'm just wondering how much of this, I'm looking at potential enrollment scenarios, but that is addressed when you're talking about the size of the building and all of that. And I just don't want to see anyone being, doing something that's already being done. I would presume that you're looking for another phase of that. I mean, a school facility review and the transportation and facility data and fire safety. Are those issues, and maybe Mrs. Gaines can answer, although you're on that committee too, are these points really covered in the building meetings?
Well, yes, they are discussed, but as you recall, the superintendent is an ex officio member of all subcommittees. He will be at these meetings. So if there's any information of that nature that needs to be provided.
So from the purpose of this committee's perspective, the Pell building is the Pell building, it's designed, it's being built, the steel's going up, it's going to be very quickly done on time. It's going to be a tremendous state-of-the-art educational facility. The question for this group to wrestle with is, if the scenario works out that you need 1, 2, 3, or 4 extra classrooms,
What do you do?
Given the way that building is planned to be occupied right now, what are the options? So these options go back and look at other facilities or they look at the Triplet facility, the Underwood facility, the Coxhill facility, and consider if I needed two extra classrooms, what options do I have at hand to accommodate that? If I needed 4, what options do I have? So this doesn't really impinge on the Pell Building Committee at all.
That's what I just wanted to be sure of, yeah.
Right.
And perhaps the building committee can even answer some of your questions.
Well, first, the introductory meeting certainly will be an overview of the Pell facility, overview, classrooms, et cetera, so people understand where we are with that. That may not be up to speed on that.
When is the first meeting?
The 24th of October, week from next Wednesday, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the parent membership on the subcommittee?
So moved.
Moved, seconded? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Any other discussion, I guess? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And thank you, David, for working with us to find two teacher representatives. Thanks. Last item, 6.8, as an action item, approve the transfer of funds from capital improvement to the technology budget item for E-rate purchases. So this is a result of our decision at our last meeting on the 27th, which was to move forward on the E-rate purchases. I think it makes sense to have those in the technology budget, since they are technology purchases, to move the money from whichever account into that.
Right, whichever account you want to take it from.
And the superintendent recommends from the capital improvement plan account, which seems to make sense to me. I don't know if there are other discussions amongst committee members. Do I have a motion to approve the transfer?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussions? Mrs. Boland?
Yeah, how much does that leave in that account?
Well, it leaves a lot in all of the accounts together, as I had indicated to you here. It leaves over $200,000 in this year's capital improvement account.
So this year's allocation was $360,000.
Correct.
So we
Right.
take the $150,000 from that.
Out of that, or you could take it out of the 419. You could take it out of either one of those accounts.
Dr. Shoemaker?
I think it was the last meeting, it was two weeks ago, we heard this discussion about E-rate and about, do we have to put it in the existing schools? And you said you had contacted somebody, and you, Jack, had contacted somebody. Did any of those come back with any more information about waiving that requirement?
Because the school committee made their decision, I stopped pursuing it
I
and
see.
spending time trying to get that answer from USAC.
Okay.
Personally, I like the idea of taking it out of this year's capital improvement plan because that $419,000 is actually bundled up in the $1.1 million of contingency funds in the Pell budget right now. So to keep things, to not have to go back and
Playground
take
equipment.
money out of that budget, I like the idea of taking it out of this,
Yeah.
shifting it from this year's capital improvement account into the technology budget, but that's a committee decision. Any other questions, Mr. Leary?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do not favor that. We have 360,000 that we fought to get back from 178 back up to 360, and I think it's very, very important that we take a look at Rogers. That's the building that needs a lot of roofing. There's probably 120,000 square feet of roof, and we probably need to do about 100,000 of it, you know? So I think we need to take all that money as much as possible each year to fix the roof up and keep Rogers going. We do have and the Thompson account, as far as I'm concerned, remains with Thompson. So I wouldn't touch that 170. That's nothing to do with this. So this money is going into Pell School. This thing we approved on a 4-3 vote last month is going to Pell School. So I would like to take it out of the capital account that we put in there from last year, 419,000. So that would be what I'd be supporting.
Okay. So do we amend the motion to be that specific? Ms. Bowling?
I'll amend the motion to read that we take it out of the 419,000 from last year's that we've applied towards the Pell School.
Okay. And so that.
Second that.
Made and seconded. Any other discussion?
Makes sense.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Motion passes 7-0. You're welcome, Mr. Leary. Discussion items. 7.1, Director of Finance recommendations for business office reorganization. So at our request, the City Council asked the City Manager to have the Director of Finance conduct a review of our business office operations. Ms. Citron did, I think, a very good job, a very thorough job looking at the details of how the business office operates and what the responsibilities of the individuals are, what reports need to be generated, how accounts get managed. She has a number of recommendations, including requiring business office and HR personnel be trained in the use of loss and accounting systems, moving purchasing responsibilities to the city, and implementing a standard exit interview process for employees, identifying positions with responsibility for the 403B plan, and insource the dispersal process to save money, supporting the Rhode Island general law requirement to provide the city finance director accurate information, issue monthly financial reports as required by law, and then consider reorganizing business, facilities, human resource, and technology under a single manager with delegated responsibilities. The report is very detailed, but they do have some very kind of high-level recommendations embedded in that. We are going to have a joint meeting with the City Council tomorrow night at 7 p.m. after they complete their regular City Council meeting to receive the report, discuss the next steps and the recommendations. Any other discussions on this item? We'll have a little time to discuss it with the City Council and their feelings about it. Anybody else has any questions about it?
Mr. Chairman, two things. Maybe one, we could hear from our business manager. She'd like to comment on it, number one. And then number two, where are they going to get the training from the Lawson system?
Well, that's a good question on the next step, because that's been hanging out there for a while, I think.
One of the things is I certainly will have some information for the school committee regarding this report and give an administrative perspective on some of the things in the report. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it because my secretary has unfortunately had an accident, wasn't here today.
Right.
So I'll have something hopefully by tomorrow if Morrison can do some dragon dictation for me.
Well, we're obviously not going to take any actions tomorrow, so for whatever the
Right.
next meeting is, where we might contemplate actions would be the appropriate time.
Absolutely. I just want to frame some things so things don't hang out without any response.
Okay. Dr. Shoemaker.
It's obvious that we're going to be looking for a new superintendent in the near future. And I just caution that we don't set in concrete how the administrative office is going to be set up before we hire the new superintendent. Because that may be a turnoff for him. He may be a specialist in certain areas, and if we say, well, we've delegated it already to the city, and I think we ought to remain flexible until we have seen and hired a new superintendent and see how he wants to frame And
Or
I use
she.
the analogy,
Or she.
or she, excuse me. I use the analogy of a football team to going out and hiring the defensive coordinator, the offensive coordinator, the special teams, and then hiring a coach who may disagree in philosophy on some of these things. So I think we've got to be cautious when we get into these discussions, that we keep the flexibility in the event that we have a new superintendent who may have a different concept as to how to organize the central office.
Mrs. Gaines?
When I read this over, one of the things that really jumped out at me was the emphasis on training. And I don't think there's ever such a thing as too much training. And if we can make our operations better by cooperating in that arena with more training in the Lawson system, it's a win-win situation. I did think, but I'll hold all my comments for tomorrow night, because there is one area that I have some angst about, but I won't go into that tonight.
One of the things when we discuss this is this report was done at the time that the business office had the perfect storm. They had the UCOA, they had the Lawson implementation, and they had complete chaos in the business office for almost 2 years. At the same time, all these things were going on. So just want to point that out.
Any other discussion? Ms. Boone?
I was just going to comment, I mean, from my perspective, though, you know, I mean, our number one focus always has to be on educating children, and if we can take away some of these, you know, tasks and put them on the city so that we can spend our time educating kids, I think it'll be a win-win for them. You know, our last superintendent, you know, that she was an incredible educator, but she didn't really maybe have, you know, the right people working in the business office. But, you know, no superintendent should fail because, you know, that they don't have the right people working, or, you know, that becomes a problem. So I'm going to be happy to see some of this, you know, taken off our plate.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, no other discussion? Next item was a request from carryover, I guess, from our September meeting, which was a request for identification of school department financial accounts and balances, particularly healthcare contributions, food service, property rental, and gate receipts. And I guess we've not
We got you
been able to.
half a loaf. We've got the accounts, but we don't have the balances yet.
Are these accounts actually bank accounts? When we call it Company 10, Fund 21, Fund 24, are they actually bank account deposits that occur? I don't.
You should be aware that most of the school department's cash in every form is held by the city. So while there is one bank account that the statement comes to my office, we have no authority to move those funds, and that is the school lunch sales. All the other bank accounts are held by the city, except for the student activity funds, which don't belong to the school department either. They belong to the students.
So what's involved in finding out the fund balance? Do you log on to the Lawson system and look at that fund number?
Yes, and at this moment in time, I'm trying to wrap up finishing the work papers for the city's auditors.
Oh, yeah.
And
That'd be good.
between the UCOA and that, I have not had time to do all those different funds.
So the school lunch program is a separate account. Do you have an idea where the balance in that account is?
The actual cash account in the sales,
I guess that's it, Fund 60.
it was about $450,000 a couple weeks ago, but the city had the authority to sweep that money because there was also a negative balance in the pooled cash account where they had essentially, because they pay all the bills. They get all the federal grants, they get the state grant money, they pay all the bills. They periodically sweep the school lunch sale money back to the city where it really belongs because they have paid all the bills.
Oh, so they've been paying Sodexo last year, for example, and not
bills.
out of a different account.
Right.
Okay.
Learn something new all the time.
You know,
But the money's, just because it's in a cash account, I mean, it's all accounted for. You take the negative cash and the pool to cash account, and the positive cash, it all belongs to the city, essentially.
My comment is, I guess I've been on school committee about 6 years or so, and I'm really more confused now than ever about all these accounts. And I'm not accusing you of, or anybody of misdoing it. It's just that from when we get this, we don't understand what accounts we should what ones we should have oversight on, and what the amount of money should be. And I think I think more has to be done in just explaining to us what the account is and the income to it, the expenditures, and what we should be looking at on a monthly basis to know that we have oversight. I've been looking at the general fund for 6 years, and then suddenly we found out that we got the food thing was in trouble a couple of years ago, and we weren't even looking at it. So I would, instead of looking at any one specific number, that we get a report as to where all these funds are and where I mean, they're sweeping the money, I understand that, but I want to know whether we are losing or gaining on any particular fund, if we're in trouble, and if we're to spot maybe somebody is taking money, we would have some way of knowing that. As it is now, we have no idea that somebody might be stealing from one of these funds.
Well, I don't think we have that kind of problem, and I think there is enough oversight in that, except for maybe the food service program. I mean, all of these other programs are all the Title I, all the Title III. We haven't received the approval for this year, but those are audited by the state and audited by our own folks. All the Company 10 and Fund 21, all of these are audited. The only thing that I can't completely understand still is the food service thing, and a little bit of what's going on with the retirees and the health benefits. But you have, and Joan gave me this on Friday. You have all of the accounts now. The next step we need to do when Joan has the time as quickly as possible is to find out what each one of these accounts has as fund balance and make sure that it's all kosher.
And that is the state law, that all the funds have to be reported to the school committee and the city council.
Right.
And we will be as soon as I can catch up.
Yeah, we weren't even getting the bank statements for the food service last year. I mean, it was just, or the year before. So it all has to do with personnel, and Joan is here, and now she's the new sheriff in town, and she's trying to clean up some of the problems that we had in the past, which none of us knew about, quite honestly.
I have a request.
Yes.
Once you get your house in order, have a workshop for the school committee and give us Finance 101. Because it's just too confusing. And you're not, at least I'm not going to get a clear understanding 5 minutes at a school committee meeting. So if when you're comfortable, teach us a little bit about what goes on.
Maybe sometime in the next month, perhaps. If that's
I don't know. That's
Will you let them know when you're when
You can see what a mess my house is at home because I spend all my time here.
Could the business manager get help from somebody, just a short term, so we can move this along? Because this has been going on, not you, but you're being drowned. And just to get her, that she can supervise and...
I don't know. It may be more of a problem than there needs to be. We did get the help from the city to give those folks a stipend. As I tell Joan almost every other day, next year will be much better than this year. Don't ever forget that. Because there's a learning curve with someone who has not been involved in the public education business side. There are a lot of different things here that she has not been used to, and she's getting used to it. State reports, timelines for food service responses, busing issues, all of those things, and I think she's done a wonderful job. But she does need the time to get these things in order, and I feel that I'm pressing her because you're asking me for information, and I just, think she has some other things that she has had to do recently to comply with the state regulations.
Mrs. Boland?
Yeah, well, I mean, the interest in the food service account would be that, first of all, I would find it kind of funny that the city never swept the account, if they had the right to do it. But if we end up having a balance in there, the only thing that money can be used for is to put back into food service.
Yeah.
Which also means equipment, and also means you could buy some of this, the things for our kitchen. So if we found out we had money in there, it would help out the Pell, it could have,
That would be great. By all indications, that wasn't the case at the end of last year. But again, I was relying on information that I was getting
right.
from the previous
But if we find out
business
this year,
administrator.
we don't know how long it's been since we've really checked into that account, and that could be an incredible help to the Pell School.
And it could.
It could.
Dr. Shoemaker?
We have a meeting with the city council tomorrow, and I hope you'll say what Jack just said, which is doing school finances is a lot different than doing municipal, because we've heard repeatedly, let's merge the two together. It's just the same thing. It's a personnel who mows the lawn or moves a snowplow as a teacher's salary or some of these funds. It's a lot more complicated, and I think somebody has to say that to the members of the city council, that this is just not somebody who can be interchanged very quickly or to take on this job just by opening up a new page the next day. What Jack and you are saying, I think, is very important, and it's being overlooked by the city council members.
I think just to point out, the report actually does say the school department is deserving of a strong business manager and an accountant working for that business manager. So certainly Ms. Citron recognizes the difference, the differentiation of responsibilities and the need.
Yeah.
That's what the report
Right.
says.
That's what yes. Right.
Okay, Mrs. Gaines.
I was going to suggest, Joan, that after you get settled,
Please don't scare her away.
I think you're kind of thin, personnel-wise. But I think you are the person who can best assess the needs of that office and come back to the superintendent and the school committee and say, I need help with ... But it'll probably take you some time to find out where the holes are and what you need to plug in.
Exactly.
Thank you.
She could probably use somebody with a bachelor's degree in accounting, like the report says.
I was going to say,
It's pretty clear.
But, all those things are great, but we've been trying to save money and put the money into the classroom, so that's the conundrum that we've had. Yeah.
Ms. Leary.
Mr. Chairman, I think that it's quite interesting, that report. See, I'm a fan of, and Laura Stitton's by no means, as you say, combine the offices. But if you look at that report closely, it talks about one of those things in here. One of the recommendations was that the deposits of revenues daily were not going in appropriate accounts. She says that right in the report. So we've been putting things in the wrong money in the wrong accounts for years. And if you read that, right in the section accounts payable and grants reporting and cash receipts, it talks about they've been deposited in the wrong accounts. So, and that's one of the problems we're having with Company
Years.
10, Fund 21.
Years.
So,
And we haven't had a business manager with this kind of experience for at least 2 years. It's all about the personnel. As you know, when I first took over this job, there was the Berkshire report. They wanted to take over, the city council wanted to take over finance back then. And you know why. And you know what I did about it, okay? So it's all about the people. Hiring competent, qualified staff to do the job is the most important thing. And if there's a glitch or if there's a person who can't do the job, that's when problems arise. And problems have arisen over the past 2 years with the operations of the business office, primarily because of that. I never had a problem when Mr. Saunders was here in terms of the audit, in terms of all these other things. It only started when we had some temporary folks and UCOA and
Yes,
Lawson
that's
came
the
at the
thing,
same
yeah.
point in time.
Yeah.
It was a mess. I'll be the first to admit that.
See, then, back to what I was saying, that you keep on saying, like, we're stuck in the past. And under new leadership, the Director of Finance from the city, I think we'll be looking forward, and that's important to me. So I will be supporting her recommendations.
Some
You
of
know.
them.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're going to look at a lot of the changes. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussions? Dr.
Yeah,
Flowers?
no, I just think when you mention about UCOA, that had come in, and those of us who were at that session with the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, at first glance, you say, well, it's almost prescriptive, but then there are certain items that you're not sure what category they're supposed to be in, and it's very convoluted, and also, I think if anything has happened, it might, I think on the city side, and also everyone else who's watching will understand that the position that Joan has here is somewhat unique in terms of what business managers do. You know, not many business managers have to worry about buses and things of that sort. And it is unique. It has its own uniqueness. I can't think of a better word, but
Thank you.
that's the point that people should really, really understand.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussions on that topic? So we'll move on, and we'll switch gears, and we'll talk about education.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing for a school committee.
Uh,
7.3 is a RIDE input on the Sullivan School improvement, so we know that there's been a meeting to look at diagnostics, but we haven't talked about it yet, so we'd like to understand where we are with a RIDE intervention and planning for school improvements with the Sullivan School moving to Pell.
Sure. Dr. Fry was at the meeting, as were a number of other folks. It was a lively discussion, was it not, Dr.
Yes,
Fry?
it was. Just to take a step back so you understand where we are in this whole process, based on the waiver that RIDE put into the government for our Race to the Top funds, the way that our schools are assessed changed a little bit, and the identification, the names changed a little bit. So when we got the report back from RIDE, Sullivan School was a priority school, which is the lowest rating of schools, and Cranston Calvert was a warning school. So based on that, we were required by RIDE to come up with a plan. And the plan is a diagnostic tool. You go through the process. We've already been identified as a school that's in need of academic need. And this is a way to go through that process, to go through a tool and look at the state law and its provisions and identify areas in leadership, in professional development, in teaching and learning, so that we can then implement a plan that will move us forward with the school. So it's not just looking at what kind of intervention we can put in place academically, but other factors that we may want to take into account as we move forward. So knowing that we're all moving to a new elementary school, RIDE has taken away, when we move into Pell, they're taking away that label as being a priority school, and we have a clean slate. Then, based on that first year, we do not come up with a rating. We go through the first year, get our scores, then we have a baseline, and the second year of that school, we will then be reassessed and come up with, you know, whatever rating it is based on our test scores and other things. So, what RIDE has also agreed to do, rather than having, because we have 4 schools moving into 1 elementary school, and 2 of our schools were identified as needing some help, they suggested, and we agreed, that rather than do a separate diagnostic tool for each one of those schools, the district would come together. We would have all of the principals at the elementary schools involved and the principal of the middle school and the high school, so come together as a team and move forward thinking of Pell and what that will look like, rather than just looking at our Sullivan at triplet for this 1 year and Cranston Calvert for 1 year. So planning forward and almost as a transition plan to help us move forward and be better prepared as we open the Pell School. Understanding, however, that we have true need at Sullivan, we have put some things in place to help us with the students there. So we have 2 math interventionists, and we do the math interventionists work with all of our elementary schools. However, they're spending more time at Sullivan at Triplett. They're going into 3rd and 4th grade classrooms during math instruction and working with small groups of students, and they're doing the regular intervention block that they do in all of the other schools. We're also involved in a project with URI on an early vocabulary system for all of our kindergarten students. They came and they assessed our students, they give our teachers the training, they offer a small stipend to our paraprofessionals and the teachers who are involved in the program. It's the beginning of a 2-year process for that, and it's aimed at early vocabulary. We also have extended across all our elementary schools our math block, so instead of 60 minutes, it's now 90 minutes. And we also have a program called Lexia that is an intervention program with reading technology for younger students. So those are the 4 big things that we're doing. We're also implementing them district-wide, but trying to concentrate our efforts at Sullivan in a more substantial way.
So will you be using some of the RIDE diagnostic tools to plan the educational programs around the Pell School for next year?
I think the diagnostic tool looks at, for instance, if we identify, they look at all of the data that we've sent to RIDE. So it's our absenteeism, everything. So they look at all of that. So say we look at one area, we can look at our absenteeism rates. So maybe they have, based on that, we identify that as a need for our schools and for Pell going forward. So they would help us or point us in the right direction, or lead us towards a team decision on how we can better impact something like that to improve attendance. So it's not, we already know that we have academic need. So it's kind of, it's not that they're looking at. It's, are there other factors that we can identify that also have, are contributing factors to our lower scores. So it's looking at the whole picture rather than just.
At some point, my understanding is the district has to submit a plan of
We
some
do.
form to the commissioner for approval?
So what we do, there are 4 meetings that we have to have with RIDE, or that we don't have to. We've chosen to have RIDE kind of help us through this process. So as a district, aiming at Pell, all of the principals meet together, and there are 4 areas of need that we go through. And every meeting, one of 4 meetings, it's probably about a 2-hour process for each meeting, we go through one piece of that. So leadership would be like a 2-hour meeting, and they take us through some of the data they have on our leadership. So maybe it would be turnover, how long we're able to retain people, those sorts of things. And they rate us, and then we look at that and discuss it, each one of the ratings, and say, yes, we agree, no, we don't agree, what can we do? Is this something, what kinds of things do you think we do? And then based on, I hope I'm not being too confusing, based on those outcomes, they give us almost like a menu of options. So under each heading, there might be 15 options. So we pick 2 options from each one of those areas that we choose to go more deeply into and to develop some sort of a plan of action.
There's a timeline for that, 60 days?
So,
90
yeah,
days?
so after our first meeting, once we have the first meeting, we have 60 days to complete the diagnostic tool. 60 business days, not 60, so 60 school days to complete that tool, which brings us now at least until the end of November. If you take holidays into account, it's into December. We submit that tool, and then the commissioner will take, say, another 30 to 60 days to review and to make some sort of a decision. So really, the end of January, sometime in January, we're thinking we'll get the results.
This is exactly why we didn't want to wait to implement some of the changes at Sullivan School. This is why we went ahead, regardless of RIDE's direction, because we knew how long their process took.
Okay. So perhaps in December, when the group figures out what they want to submit, we can have a meeting and kind of discuss that, what the changes that are being recommended.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Dr. Flowers?
Yeah, this is just for information, about extending the math instruction to 90 minutes. Can I assume that it's broken up, or does it depend on the grade?
It depends on, it can depend on the grade. It's very difficult.
Let's hope it's broken up.
That's what I know.
I mean, the same with ELA. It's very difficult when you have itinerants and lunch and
I don't think you're going to get 90
recess
straight
to get
minutes.
any, and it would be, I mean, really, it's too much time all at once, so having the
that's
breaks
true.
is.
Yeah, because, I mean, extending that's a 30-minute extension a day, isn't it? In some of
It
the
is.
grades?
It also includes the math intervention.
Oh, okay.
So-
Yeah. There's one point
Rocket
here, I'm just
math.
looking at one page, it says that what this is not a substitute for professional judgment. Because sometimes it's that gut reaction of the teachers who really know, they really know what the problem is. And you cited the absentee, the truancy situation. I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that there's a connection in some cases with that.
Right.
Sometimes it's ability, but sometimes it's that they're just not there.
Thank you. Any
You're
other
welcome.
questions on that subject? Don't go any
You might as well stay.
Okay.
Item 7.4 is, again, an educational issue. Review reading teacher workload, including identification of students in need of service, number of hours per week services provided, size of student groups and services delivered. So really the question revolves around or focuses on how many students do we have, how do we schedule services for them, and do we have enough resources to really address the needs of the students in our school systems?
Okay, so the way we deliver services varies quite a bit from the elementary level to the middle level to the high school level. The number of students that we serve at each level is significantly different as well. So although we have more reading teachers at the elementary level, the focus that they have on students is really very small group oriented, meeting with students at least 3 times a week, often 5 times a week, for at least 30 minutes. So it's very different there than it is at the high school or the middle school. The high school we have 2 reading teachers that service 119 students. They service all of those students in reading classes. So they have students that come, they have a reading class with students in front of them in larger groups as well. I mean, it varies depending on the period, but absolutely, you're not going to go into a reading class at the middle school or at the high school and see the reading teacher working with 3 to 5 kids under most circumstances. So their case, the other difference that's huge is at the elementary level, all of the classroom teachers write PLPs. At the middle school and the high school, the reading teachers write PLPs, which is, 119 PLPs written by 2 reading teachers and at the middle level, they write many, many PLPs as well. So that's a significant.
Whatever happened to the concept that there would be an initial PLP, the document would be there, and then the next PLP would just roll it up a bit?
RIDE.
That is what I thought we were going to do.
And we don't. In fact, our PLPs are written every year. They have to be made historic, which means that the PLP has to be closed at the end of the school year. And a new PLP is written at the beginning of every school year. So it's a completely new document, and
don't we have TINET or one of those things?
They're stored in TINET.
Right. So why can't we? Because I don't want to have the teachers do any more paperwork than they need to. Why can't we take a PLP from one year? The teacher figures out what's on that PLP, and what the kid has
They-
achieved, and then just add stuff for the new year.
They
So there's
do.
not a brand-new PLP that's...
Right, they do use the old PLPs.
Okay.
However, when they're made historic, they become like a PDF file, and you cannot cut and paste. So it's not like you can go you can go and review the PLP, but you cannot copy anything, with your cursor, cut and paste it. You cannot do that.
Is there any documentation or storage software that would enable us to do that?
Some teachers build Word documents when they write their PLPs, so that they have a
Library.
a library of what the interventions are that are most commonly used, so that they can
Bank, sort of.
bank
Bank.
some
Well,
of that.
that's what
so
I
that
was
they-
getting at. I mean, that's what you should have, and we should...
And they do, but in Tynet, you have to make, according to RIDE, a PLP is new every single year.
Yeah, but
And
come on. I mean, it's...
And when you make
it's-
them historic, you cannot, and it's the teacher, the other thing is that the PLP, obviously, you have a PLP, a personal literacy plan, until you are at grade level.
Which is
So-
another very
Which is
strange
another,
thing.
but, so I'm a fourth grade student, my teacher, I'm a fourth grade teacher, my student has a PLP, I make that PLP, take it out of draft form and make it historic at the end of the year, and then the new teacher, although she can gain access to it, she can't cut and paste anything.
Quickly, please explain for the school committee what that specifically means, because this to me is so amazing. Providence must have all their kids on PLPs, given the way this is defined. If a kid begins fourth grade and the kid's reading level is third grade 6 months, that kid technically should have a PLP?
In the elementary school, RIDE identifies, or in the law, you write a PLP for any student who's below grade level.
Which means...
Which means any student, if you come in and it's December of 2012, and you have a student that you're in fifth grade and they're at the beginning of fifth grade,
You still have to remember. That's...
or 5.3 months, you would still have to write a PLP for that student. At the middle school and the high school, it's a year. Once they're reading, you have to identify all students that are reading below grade level, but you write a PLP for students that are 1 year or more below grade level.
And it didn't used to be that way. It used to be something different than that, I believe. They've just made it even more restrictive.
It's gone through a transition over the past 4 or 5 years.
Used to be 2 years at the high school. I mean, it's just... And the paperwork's killing folks. I mean,
It's a lot of paperwork.
It's not as though the kids shouldn't get the service. It's just the amount of time, effort, and energy on paperwork.
It is a tremendous, they work at the middle school and the high school.
Yeah.
The reading teachers work very hard to, to accomplish the tasks that they have.
Mrs. Bowen?
Well, now, it's honesty time. So when those things are written, are they really working documents, or is it just paperwork?
No, they absolutely are. They are working.
they
I
really
can
use them?
attest to, they really do follow data. This year, more than any other year, I think the middle school has always been very good about using data to drive what they do. They've had a database that maybe not the whole school is used, but we're moving towards that. But all the reading teachers at the middle school have used their own database for years. And they look at, they've updated now, they look at NWEA, they look at NECAP, they look at SRIs, which is a part of their Read 180 program. So they level kids. They look at DRAs for fifth graders. They look at anecdotal information. They look at recommendations from...
That's all part of their PLP?
It's all part of the identification process. And then they use the progress monitor. And many of them, progress monitor using both the fluency piece and the comprehension piece for all of their students. So it's a tremendous amount of work that they take on, and they do very well, and they absolutely use it to guide what they do.
Dr. Shoemaker?
A couple of months ago, we had some extra money come available, and it was said, well, let's put a reading teacher in. And well, how do we know we needed a reading teacher here or we needed a math teacher? And I think that's what's led to this report. Let me ask you, do we need more reading specialists or do we need more math specialists?
Or do we need both?
Well, both. I'll say both.
I think that,
Yes.
Show me the money.
I think that that we're struggling with having fewer reading teachers right now. I'm not sure if it's solely due to growing pains and figuring out how we address this, or if it's, if it's going to be an ongoing issue. I think that as we transition to Pell, I think we have to think very carefully about what we do. And I think there are things that we can do and put in place that will help us better meet the needs of our students. I think at the middle school, they do a really nice job with identifying and meeting with both those students that need targeted intervention and the students that need intensive interventions. I don't think that we do as good a job of that at the elementary level. And I think part of it has to do with planning forward and looking at Pell and putting in, we have an intervention block for math. I think that we should absolutely have something in place for reading as well, so that we can meet the needs of targeted and intensive kids. It's a little bit different at the elementary level with the targeted and the intensive than it is at the middle or the high school. So, right now, at this moment in time, I'm not sure exactly what resources we do need. I know that it's been really difficult for the middle school teachers, reading specialists, to take on that extra grade. But I think that we'll have to, it's a wait and see. We'll have to see what's, if it's really working, if we can manage this way, or if we need to take a step back and think a little bit harder.
Ms. Gaines?
If you recall at one of the meetings, either August or September, I'm not sure, we had a parent who had a problem with getting service.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the result of lack of staff, or how did that happen?
That is, I think partially it's a misunderstanding of what, at the elementary level, we have students that come in kindergarten, and we do not generally write PLPs for students in kindergarten until January, until the end of January. So we do assessments in the fall. We see where they are, but their kids that are in kindergarten are all over the place. It's a very wide range of skills, and often it's simply a matter of the light bulb going off, and it can happen at any time. So during that first year in kindergarten, we wait until January after our second testing period to really identify those kids that really are in need of service, and not just, it's not just a cognitive light bulb going off kind of thing. So I think that parent misunderstood. I believe that child was a kindergarten child, and I think that, I don't think it was for lack of service. I think it was really...
No, the youngster was a Coggeshall youngster. We had plenty of service availability at Coggeshall last year for reading, so I don't think that should have been the issue. I don't know whether or not the youngster was a kindergarten youngster or not. My concern is that we ramp up quickly to provide the services that the kids need.
Mrs. Boland?
Yeah, are you comfortable with the way that the reading teachers are kind of divided out amongst the district? Do you feel as if, it's done, because every year, of course, the number of PLPs change at each school, and I know that Sullivan, in light of the fact that you've told us that you don't really work with kindergartners, 4 of their classrooms are kindergarten classrooms, so there are really only 8 classrooms left there. So
but it's not, it isn't about classrooms, it's about the students in the classrooms.
The numbers of
So,
right.
But initially, our data collection process, it may seem very slow to you. We always look at where they come in, and our students that have PLPs from last year, we look at those, and you identify those students. The reading specialists come in, and they do testing at the elementary level, middle school, and high school as well. They DRA the students as they come in. Based on that, then we have to wait for PALS, then we have to wait for NWEA, which is just finishing up. So now, at this time of year, they have their database, they're filling in all of that data. So the students that they worked with in September could be very different than the students they end up working with at the end of this month. So, it definitely changes, and because we have district reading specialists, we can shift responsibilities.
And that was the concept. The services should follow the kids.
Right.
Not
And
be
absolutely in January, it's going to, Sullivan may not be as needy now. They certainly don't have as many PLPs as they have traditionally in the past because they have so many kindergartens. But come January or February, it could be a very different story. So being able to shift people is a really important
I think one of the questions that will always come up at budget time is the allocation of resources to this challenge area. So, at some point, being able to demonstrate that students who receive either reading or math intervention services on some objective measure, one of these assessment measures, really from year to year do better than the kids who unfortunately were not able to receive those services. And I think that's what the school committee tends to weigh. Should I or shouldn't I have one more reading teacher, two more math intervention teachers?
Well, so I think this year, district-wide, we have a pretty solid database, and all of our reading teachers have been asked to keep data on students. We have the PLPs, which carry all their progress monitoring data as well. And at the end of the year, we'll have the NECAP results, which is waiting way too long. But, and in between, they look at their databases at least quarterly, when grades come out, and they shift students based on that. So, and we'll shift the reading teachers based on that.
When our new director of technology gets here at the end of the month, ask him how to edit those portable document formats, those PDF documents.
He probably knows.
He will
how to
have an
do
answer
that.
for you. You'll have a tool that you'll have to install to do it.
Oh, see, yeah, that's.
He will know how to do it.
I will ask him that.
Definitely ask him.
Yep, great. Thank you.
All set?
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks. Discussion item 7.5 has to do with identification of students eligible for free and reduced lunch. Ms. Fuller?
Yeah, well, I put this on the agenda because as of this last year, the new funding formula is also, directly related to the number of children that you have on free and reduced lunch. And so in Newport, we can't really manipulate, how many houses pay property taxes and whether, we're in poverty or whatever. But this is one thing that we could put some resources to and be able to help identify these kids. And the results will be twofold. One is kids who are well-nourished do better in school. So that's a side benefit to it. And the other thing is that if we make an all-out effort to locate these kids, every child that gets identified is worth an extra $1,651 per child in our district. So, and that's money that can then be used to hire reading specialists. And typically what happens is between, I think our elementary, overall our district right now, last year was like 64% maybe?
Something like
62?
that, 60,
All right.
yeah, 60.
But what happens is it trails off. So last year in the high school, we actually, by the end of the year, we were doing a pretty good job. We got ourselves up to 52%. But what happens is you can see that a number of kids are missing, and it turns out to be like 100 kids. If you look at that 52% down to the 60, overall, I think it's in the elementary, it's more like 70 almost, 68 or something. So if we could find those missing kids by really, and the hard thing about this is this falls under Mrs. Tracy's job, which is, and what? Miss Tracy. Yeah, well, it couldn't, she couldn't have one more thing on her plate. And really, so.
Well, she could, but it would sink the ship, so
it
we
would
don't.
sink the ship. But, I'm just, I pointed out to Dr. Ambrosi the other day, one area is every year we have 48 kids that are in out-of-district placements. Who spends the time to make sure that those 48 kids have a lunch foreman every year?
Okay.
You found that out?
And what? Yeah, right. So after we talked about this the other day outside, two things. I talked with Mr. Nelson, and we will have the person who takes the lunch information up at the high school dedicated for the next 2 weeks to focus on trying to beat the bushes to make sure every youngster returns the form appropriately. If they haven't returned the form, they're going to we'll have Eddie go out and get the form. That's number one. Number two, It's the Student Services, Amy Donnelly Roach, who's responsible for doing that. And I have been like ships in the night with Amy, and I will remind her of this. Most of those youngsters are eligible for free and
Right,
reduced
because
lunch.
if we found the 100 kids, it's worth $165,000 extra to this district.
And that's a function of the state aid formula?
Right.
Who did?
So, and also.
Those letters have already gone out. Marson has let me know to the out-of-district placement.
Okay, and another point to this is, as of October the 18th, the kids are identified from the year before, and they're grandfathered in for the first 20 school days. So on October the 18th, kids who were receiving free lunch since September are all of a sudden going to be cut off. And at the high school, we actually just literally cut them off. So we really want to make sure, that's why it's good for the next 2 weeks and that we get this.
Right.
Get it done.
Yep.
But also, we need to make sure that we have procedures in place, like just for making sure that kids that come into the district, that we maybe have that now inside the registration packet, and just different things. I mean, it would just really benefit us to look at our procedures, because it is such a huge financial, and that's money for reading teachers.
Yeah, I do believe we put that in the new packets.
Okay.
So,
Mrs. Gaines?
we did. Yep.
A couple of years ago, there was some discussion about making a family form for the.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
It is state law.
We've already done that. If one youngster at the elementary level fills a form in and the parents list all the other kids, they're automatically on it.
And it's also, we bought an advanced system called Nutrisystem, which actually.
Which helps out
links
too.
Addresses, different family last names, Mrs. Gaines, so it's much better than what we've had in the past.
Then why is there such a vast difference in the percentage of
It's always
free and reduced from the high school to the elementary?
The only thing that I can attribute that to is if there's a high school kid that doesn't have a younger sibling and doesn't report.
Yeah. Right, and I think it's also going to be important that we inform parents that even if your child chooses not to, take part of the program, that now that our funding formula is, based on this, so we're going to have to do a better effort of informing parents that even if you choose not to take advantage, that you fill it out,
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
Knocking on the doors to get.
Yeah, I do have one more question. So do we have a plan, like for the middle school then, is there somebody, there that we're going to be able, do we have a lunch aid at the middle school? I don't even know.
Can I address this? I spoke to the clerk at the middle school today, and they're ahead of their application.
Really?
She sent out reminder letters. They're down to 30 responses.
That's it?
From the list of people that had free lunch last year.
Okay. I mean, we have made and redoubled.
We've done a really good job.
We've redoubled our efforts. I mean, it's going to be like No Child Left Behind. There will be some kids that we won't be able to find, but we're really trying hard to
And
find
some
them
people will refuse to fill out.
And there are some people who say it's none of your business.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had that happen before. So we're trying.
I thank Mrs. Boland for bringing that important subject up, because it is important,
Sure.
especially this time of the year, early part of the year, to identify those children.
Absolutely.
And just one more point, we did find out that March 15th is the date used by RIDE for the funding formula.
Right.
So we do have all year long to get those numbers up, March 14th.
Okay. Any other discussion on that topic? Okay, next, item 7.6, chronic absenteeism. I think, as everybody knows, we've been wrestling with this question for some time, and Dr. Shoemaker's identified some resources with some ideas about how to go about a comprehensive attack on that.
Well, these aren't my ideas, but I just came across some interesting material. The reason I came across this, if you've been watching the paper's editorial pages lately, there have been a lot of articles about poverty, child achievement, dropout rates. And one of those, interestingly, was written by Joe Crowley. Now, remember who Joe Crowley was? He was our finance director last
One
year.
of the two.
Anyhow, he was a principal, and he wrote a very good article, op-ed, for the Providence Journal, but there's been a lot of good stuff in the New York Times. And sort of following through on this, I came across a book called Why Reading. If you look at that yellow page I gave you, look at the very bottom if you can read it. early warning, why reading by the end of third grade matters. Because if a child is not a proficient reader at the end of third grade or at the beginning of fourth grade, more than likely that kid is going to drop out and not graduate. You can have all the interventions you want, and what they're saying is what matters is not what happens from fourth grade on, it's what happened beforehand. And if you want to get this booklet, it's 61 pages. I'd say a third of the pages are pictures, so it's really not much reading material, but it's loaded, and it's from the Ann E. Casey Foundation at the bottom there. And if you click on that, you get they'll send you a free copy. I really wasn't interested in absenteeism, but there was one whole page that came out on absenteeism, and in view of our previous comment, I just sent it along to Pat. And what they're saying is, basically, is what happens in pre-K. A strong parent-patient relation, a strong parent-child relationship is what is important. And that carries over into the second column. It'll educate parents about what to do to become involved. That is their idea of how to treat absenteeism. It's interesting. You'll see that there's nothing in here about, sending out truant, well, maybe truant officers to keep them involved, in contact, but nothing about taking the kid to court or finding the parent. The problem has to solve this problem. You've got to get back to pre-K. You've got to start at birth, get the child interested in education. That's how you treat absenteeism in their book.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that Dr. Ambrosi met with Family Court Judge Levesque last week, reviewing your report for the month.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and I'm sure he'll be helpful.
So this is more of a right-wing than liberal view of how to deal with the problem. But we do know that the reports are that people who actually are serviced by family court actually respond from a family court judge's perspective and actually improve their attendance and behaviors in school. So we were told by the chief judge of the family court that they had more capacity now. We could refer more families to them. Do we have a backlog of families from an absenteeism truancy perspective?
We had some from last year. I don't know exactly where we are this year. My purpose in meeting with Magistrate Levesque was to welcome him to the district and say, we need you. Yeah, we need you here, Chuck. Thank you for coming. So I'm sure that we'll continue. I'll continue to have a dialogue with him.
Right. But certainly agree with Dr. Shoemaker's view on attacking this at the earliest age as possible. But also, as a realist, know there are a lot of families going to slip right through that net.
Yeah, I don't have
how do you react to those? Okay. Any other discussion on chronic absenteeism? Thank you. Reports from the superintendent and staff, expenditures and revenue reports.
It's listed again. Right now, we are encumbering and forecasting to zero. When Joan sees some of the light at the end of her tunnel, we will sit down, we will figure out what is actual encumbrances and how that plays out. All I know, and I want to say this very clearly, every Lawson purchase order of over $500 I review and approve personally. Every Lawson purchase order of over $500 I review and approve personally, and it has been depressing because the special ed tuitions have been coming in over the last 2 weeks. So that's the big ticket item that soon we'll be able to encumber, and then we'll get a better understanding of where we are this year. I tell you now, and as I've told you before, I am very concerned, more than I have been in the past 7 years, as to the budget and ending the year in the black. So we're being really careful, and we're going to find out soon where we are in the tuitions, because that's a big issue. We already know we have some problems in some other areas, but we'll take a look at that next month and the month after.
Dr. Shoemaker?
I probably should have brought this up when we were talking about interventions. that race to the top. I mean, they got all this money upstate. They're mandating that we have, intervention. Are they paying for any of this, or are they just paying for the people to come down?
They're paying for what they want to pay for.
But they're not paying for the intervention.
They're not paying for our interventionists. They're not subsidizing Dr. Naspo's salary. They're paying for what they want to pay for. They're paying for in-service type activities. They're paying for us to have a ride person come down and support us. This isn't the flexibility that we would like under Race to the Top. This is what the State Department of Education has said they pay for.
I have a question. So I am concerned that in some sense we're flying a little bit blind here until we have an accurate accounting system and the variances accurately reported to the school committee. So we're 3 months, a quarter of the way into the year, and we're not there yet.
Right.
Are we going to be there in 30 days, 60 days?
Well, we're not really 3 months into the school year, we're actually in the month of September.
No, we start July 1st for our fiscal year, right?
I know.
Okay.
Look at the
So,
spending.
no. Our year goes.
The first 2 months, it's dwarfed by what happens in September.
Yeah. Our year goes July 1st to June 30th.
The truth of the matter is I'd like to find out sooner rather than later in terms of where we should be, where we are. I can't give you those answers, only,
I mean, we, by law, right, we need, well, actually, the finance director of the city has to submit a monthly report to the Department of Education. So I'm not sure how they're doing that if we don't know what the variance is.
Poor John.
We probably also need to revise the school department budget to reflect the changes that we did the last time, too. So, I mean, I think that all of those things are important. We changed the bottom line budget to take money out of available balance and move it into something. So we should do that. And again, I'd love to have the answers yesterday. I get really nervous when I don't have the information, but right now, Joan's trying to dig her way out of some past reports that weren't submitted. We had $500,000 worth of ARA money that was booked this past month for the salary and benefits. So she had to do that. So again,
We'll revisit it next month. Hopefully we'll be in a better state. Okay, thank you. Enrollment reports?
The enrollment reports are listed.
Any questions on enrollment reports?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Leary.
I think it's getting time here. Could we ask the high school for number of kids per class?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I think we need to look at that. If you look at that, I had a few calls about the Round Monthly Magazine. Everybody saw it last month, I'm sure. And it listed the 4 or 5 categories. It listed all the high schools in the state, 39 or 40, whatever it was. And then it listed the expenses. We were number 1 for expenses per high school.
I caution everybody on that one because I don't know if NACTEX folded in on that.
Right.
So
And
I mean, and the JROTC and those kinds of things. But I understand what you're saying, Bob.
Right, because
we'll get that information.
You open up into Coxville and you see kindergarten, 22, 21, 2 classes. You see first grade, two classes of 21. So I don't know what classes they're having at Rogers. I'd like to have that from each one, if we could, from the teachers.
We can get that information.
Thank you.
And it would depend on what
Of course. I mean, of course, we're running AP courses, and then we're running, upper-level French courses. I mean, it depends upon the course to some extent, but we'll be able to get you the specific information.
I haven't looked at InfoWorks in a while, but the last time RIDE had updated the per-student cost in districts was 2009, and I don't know if they've updated that data recently.
I don't know.
Right. Because we have reduced cost and increased enrollment.
We have.
We should sit better in terms of the state,
Yeah.
I think.
I agree. And again, I don't know what they've included and what they haven't.
Any other questions? Damage reports, we have none. Superintendent's update.
Just Truth in Advertising 21, Aquidneck Collaborative for Education. I was not able to make the meeting this morning, So
Okay.
I had every intention to, but I didn't make it. But the other things are correct.
Okay. We have a motion to accept the superintendent's report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and that's the end. We are going to adjourn briefly, very briefly, into executive session.
Yeah.
Yes?
You didn't have Pell updates on here.
Oh, we'll have to put it on next agenda meeting because we don't have it on there.
Okay, can I just announce then? Can I announce something?
I don't know.
Oh, wait a second, here we go. As I told Charlie, I could always find a way to do this.
The superintendent's update
Under my
includes,
superintendent's
Pell meeting
update,
attended.
we had a Pell meeting, so, and I think, Mrs. Gaines, can you tell us a little bit about what I did at the Pell?
That'd be number 4,
I don't
Mrs.
even
Gaines.
remember.
Well, you said you wanted
Well,
the
I just want, well, the steel is going up for
Right.
Building C.
Yeah,
And sometime next week, there will be steel flag raising
right, yeah.
for the for the final beam. And you'll get short notice of the date because it's up to the steel workers when
They do that.
Yeah. So, but it will be sometime next week.
Okay,
Oh, thank you.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you ready for?
Yeah, motion to
make
convene
a
an
motion.
executive session.
Yeah, the school committee may seek to convene if warranted executive session under jurisdiction of Rhode Island State Law, Chapter 42-46-5, and the exceptions are A and 1, personal matters, and the person or persons affected have been notified in advance and in writing, and advise that they may require that the discussion be held in open session.
Second.
Motion seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?